Welcome everyone. My name is Genevieve Vega. Welcome to the folks on Zoom. I hope you can hear and see me okay. If you can't hear or see me on the Zoom channel, please send a note through the chat and we will adjust accordingly. My name is Genevieve Vega. I am the people lead for the NextGen Network project, team initiative, all the things. And we've brought you here today to do incident management review. So I'm going to do just a couple of housekeeping notes before we bring up Jess Evans to get us started. In front of you, you have handouts. We'll go over this content. This is a takeaway for you, so we'll go over this in a little bit more detail during the training, but you can reference that. On the back of your handout are some QR codes. See me after if you have a hard time getting to QR codes. But these are links to a feedback survey for the end of the training that you can get to. Quick 5 minutes of feedback after you go through this would be helpful to see if you have any other questions or changes you would like to see made. And then all the slides that we'll go over today is that second QR code, and then current documents that exist for incident management are also linked here. We will have an effort to consolidate those documents later on, but for now, that's the information that we have available. So want to make sure you're aware of that. All right. So these are the topics we'll be covering today. And I'm going to bring Jess up. She said, hang on just 1 minute, so I'm going to tap dance for a second. What Jess will cover is why you're here, right? Why do we pull you all here for this training? And that is the very next topic that Jess is going to cover.
Okay, it's afternoon, right? Okay, it's been a long day, so good afternoon. First, I didn't do this last time, and I just want to do a quick check-in because I found out after the fact we had like 45 people on Zoom in the 9 o'clock session. How many are on Zoom right now? 23. Awesome. Okay, so I'll try to be as engaging as possible for those on Zoom. Okay. We've had a lot of change in this last year, okay? Most recently, the biggest change has been relative to our NextGen network, and we had an RFP, and we've selected partners, and we've brought a whole slew of new people into the ODT realm and the UTO realm, and I'm starting to notice a little bit of confusion around incident management, and since back to school is next week, I thought it might be a good opportunity to make sure we're all on the same page and make sure you guys know who our partners are and have an operations review. So, yep, with that, so that's kind of why we're here. So we're doing back to school, operational excellence, that was always the first and foremost, if you remember, and talking about communication and making sure we're all on the same page. So what's in it for you? Hopefully there'll be something in it for you. At a minimum, I'm hoping to provide clarity. That's really what I'm looking to get out of this for you guys, is so that we're all on the same page, we have the same information, and we can all work in the same fashion. Refresher, alliance, all these things. Before I dive into it, is there any questions on what you want to get clarity on or why we're here? Chance for some Smarties. I will be coming, you guys that know me, I will be coming around later and like asking questions, so just a heads up. Okay, good, here we go.
Everyone heard that.
Yeah, so the question, and for those on Zoom, if you didn't hear it, are we driving more towards an ITIL infrastructure? ITIL version 4. Aha. And that is important because it's a very big distinction because ITIL version 1, 2, and 3 are antiquated, old, and not going to get us where we need to go in the future. Version 4 takes the DevOps model and helps us transition from transactional relationships into shifting left. But what that means is getting the customer involved earlier on, trying to think proactively about things instead of doing the old somebody does development and they throw it over the fence to operations and then they have to figure out how to make it stand up. And right, so shifting left means earlier in the cycle involving operations and development together. So that is where we're headed. Today's training And I'm going to actually, this is what I'm going to share a vision with you about the user experience that we want to have on campus from a student perspective. I'm going to get into that in a second. We are really going to get into the meat of incident management because that is our first fundamental core competency that we have to have in order to get to all of these visionary things I'm going to share right now. So excellent question. Okay. Visionary. Digital transformation, right? So this is a quote that we came up with because I've said this story. I can't even tell you how many times I've said this story, but a lot. And I'm going to share this story with you because as I'm sharing this story, I want you to think about all of the technology that is required to make this story true. Okay? Imagine, if you will, Johnny Student is riding in his autonomous vehicle, self-driving car. And as Johnny's coming to the university, he's probably playing Fortnite or maybe doing some Minecraft building or whatever it is that he's doing, because his car allows him to do that now. And as Johnny's coming into the university, and as his car crosses over the Arizona State University network mesh, ping, Johnny's car comes to life. Maybe a little bit, disgruntled because his game got interrupted. Ping, Johnny, welcome to ASU. You've just crossed into the mesh network. We see that you have an econ class starting in 10 minutes. We know that Arizona State has a parking problem, so we have already reserved a parking space for you, and we are directing your car to that space as we speak. Johnny's car drives over, pulls into the spot. Ping! Johnny realizes he's going to be late, jumps out of the car. All of the experience transfers to his mobile device. Johnny, we have been notified that there is a protest on campus. Your normal walking route is not safe for you to take. Please follow this new route outlined on your phone for you so you can get to econ class safely. Johnny starts to walk to econ class. Johnny gets close to the building. As he enters in, Johnny, class has already started. You are late. We also see that you did not turn your homework in that is due this morning. Good luck. As Johnny walks into class, ping, Johnny, there's a group assignment. Your group members aren't here. Good luck. Right, Johnny's having a tough day. Johnny gets out of econ class and decides, man, I'm just going back to the residence hall. I am beat. Gets into his car, drives to the hall. As Johnny walks into the residence hall, ping, on his mobile device. Johnny, there's a network LAN party on the 10th floor and they're all playing Fortnite. You might want to go join them. Right. Now, as I explain that whole experience, let's take a walk back through. Every time Johnny got a ping, he crossed over a geographic location. It had to understand who was in the room and what building he was in. It had to understand and look into Canvas to see what classes were coming, what homework assignments were coming, who's part of that class, who's part of his group. Think of all of the technology required to invoke that experience. That's what we're trying to do here at ASU. In order to do that, we have to have a digital transformation of how we run our network, how it's architected, how it's operated, and how we maintain it. That's why you're here today, because we have to step all the way back to core basics of support and operations in order to get to that goal. Cool. All right, now that I have your undivided attention, you're all ready for the next thing. Okay, desired outcomes. So these are some of the things we're looking to do and make sure you guys understand why you're here. So we need to have improved tracking of incident types. We need to have improved communications, efficient and effective rapid restoration of normal services. I learned a really important phrase last week when I was traveling. We want to not just improve the mean time to resolution, we would like to improve the mean time to innocence. A lot of time things get blamed, and it's not really the case. And so I think we should work towards mean time to innocence instead of resolution, if we can. Okay, this is an eye test chart. Everybody, cover one eye and tell me what you see. No, I'm just kidding. This is here to help you guys understand some of the larger roles and what they do and who's on point and what organization they sit in. With the advent of our new network team, which we are calling NextGen Networks, hence this beautiful little approved logo. You guys would be amazed how hard it is to get this approved. Lainey can tell you all about it. We have that logo to represent that we are one unified team here at ASU, regardless if you work for Slalom or High Tech or Cox or Kearney or Teltech or Mickey Mouse or whoever. If you're part of our team, you're part of the NextGen network, and we're one unified team. So with that, we have multiple roles, and we're going to go into those in further detail. I'm not going to read this to you. All of you can read, and you will get these slides later. So let's start at the Experience Center. In my humble opinion, the most crucial department in the entire university. Why? Because it's the only place everybody knows to go to get questions answered, or if they want to file a complaint, or if they have a problem, or if they want crossword puzzles solved, right, Eric? I mean, they do it all, right? Okay. Because of that, it is important for everybody in operations to understand all of the mess that they handle all of the time. And right now as we speak, their queue is backing up. Where are we at? 100?
Finances has 157.
157 in the queue waiting to be answered. Hold times are at?
Longest one is hour and 44 minutes.
Hour and 44 minutes. To say they're busy is an understatement. So it's important for everybody to understand what they do and how they need to be helped, and they need to be educated on what you need them to do so that we don't have any more consternation. So, most crucial department. They handle general information services, financial aid calls. Those are their favorite.
Absolutely. Keep them coming.
Yeah, right. We're masochists, right? Okay. We have technology. You guys also do parking and facilities and HR and all of these things at the university. It's not just a technology center. So it's important for everybody to know this. Okay, password resets, which hopefully some of these things we can eventually automate. So pause for dramatic effect. Hopefully we can automate. Okay. All right. Good. All right. So other roles. The other critical areas. Experience Center is first. Operations Center is next. That's Kevin Lockhart's department. These guys are going to make sure when everything goes cattywampus, it's a new word for me, cattywampus, it's going to be taken care of. They're going to prioritize our P0s or P1s. They're going to make sure that our P0s and P1s are actually catastrophic events and that we should invoke the escalation chain that you'll see later. They're going to open tickets, and then they'll provide executive updates. It is important to understand that the Operations Center is not there to solve the problem. They are not. They are not going to start trying to troubleshoot networks. It is their job to gather the right team to get to the core of the issue. That is their job. Once we have a P0 or P1, their main job is to make sure there's an acknowledgement, and I don't know if these are all on the desks. Yeah, you guys got one? Okay, good. And for those of you online, we'll send it along. But for a P0, if you recall, acknowledgement in 15 minutes. That means the service owner, the next important group, has to accept responsibility for that ticket, and it is their job to drive to resolution, either with a workaround or a permanent fix. We're going to talk about the nuances of those in a minute. For P1, it's 30 minutes for acknowledgement, and that's what the Operations Center does. They verify the severity, they make sure that it is acknowledged, and they are there to help that service owner gather the right people in the room. So we're all clear. Cool. I'm going to just keep doing that. So what is the escalation path? Really important. We have the Experience Center, EC, Operations Center, OC, and then we also have a specific network NOC run by High Tech, which is really our NextGen network team. And you'll see those logos in Slack. They start doing tickets. They figure it out. We decide, oh man, it's pretty important. We make sure the service owner takes ownership of the ticket, acknowledges it within the window, and then is starting to work the ticket. At that point, we should say, okay, what level of leadership needs to be invoked? We have a matrix up here that'll tell you if executive leadership needs to be invoked or not. But at a minimum, somebody in ODT should probably be called because we probably need to help get that fixed at a minimum. Not to mention there are most likely service owners that cross all UTO. And so the other important aspect is this is not just a network conversation. This is an operations conversation. which means that we have plenty of software as a service that is just as crucial to this university, that is just as important to our end users, and just because it doesn't sit on our metal in our racks doesn't mean we're not responsible for it. So we have to contact service owners so we can figure out how to get our customer service restored to our end customers. Okay, if it's really severe, you're gonna be calling one of the executive team members. And then if it's really, really, really severe, we're going to ask Lev and see if we need to communicate outside of UTO. There's a new addition that is really important. I'm coming over here. Samantha Becker. Samantha, does anyone know who Samantha Becker is? Oh, good. We have a couple. Okay. It's exactly why you're here today. Samantha Becker started in UTO back in July. She is our Executive Director of Communications. She is added in our escalation path because if there is a communication that must be crafted to go outside of UTO, Sam has to be involved and she will help facilitate that. And so if that has to happen, she is added into our escalation path. Just want to make sure everybody understands so that we have a bigger picture. Okay, good. All right, so when and who when is a service, what services qualify for a P0 and who is the service owner and contact? This, I do not think, at this point in time, is an exhaustive list, because there might be something that's missing from here. But I think it's a pretty decent list. And please note, software as a service on there. So Slack and Zoom, if it goes down, pretty important, because we use it for our operations every day. We need to know, which means we also have to have backups, which means email's not going away. And I know as soon as I said that, Lev just cringed as he watched this video, but we must make sure that we restore services. So Slack and Zoom have been added to the list. Salesforce is on there. Our PeopleSoft, our Edna, our single sign-on. These are all things, Office 365, that if the university does not have them, things stop working. That's the definition of a P0. If the university cannot do their job, then we need to restore that service as fast as possible. Another critical element, I get a lot of pushback where they say, well, I can't help it if Zoom goes down. I can't do anything to restore it. Okay. However, there is a service owner, and I already know Melissa's going to be on it, and she's going to call them. But what's most important is that we document that incident as a P0. Why is that important? Does anyone know why that would be important? Please.
We would have contracted with this third-party vendor, so
give the man some smarties.
Anomalies that occur, both successful or unsuccessful.
Exactly. Thank you. That's exactly right. That vendor, I pay them money. You pay them money. We pay them money. If they're not giving us service, why do I want to continue to pay them? Should I be billed 100% for that service? No, not if I'm not getting 100% of my service. The only way to document, though, is that on our side, we document our experience. And then we can relay that as contract renewal and say, oh, look, I had 7 P1s with you, and I had 2 P0s, and that resulted in 15 hours of outage. And guess what? I'm not paying you. So let's talk about that, right? But I can't do that unless we are documenting all of this information. So understanding the nuances of incident management, understanding the nuances between a service request and an incident and a problem, and we'll get into that, are all critical things for day-to-day operations. Okay. Here we go. These are P1s, so this is continued. Fun note, I don't see it on here, but let me give you a great example. Next week, back to school, right? We got some people coming back. We're going to have a little bit of busyness here. Slightly. Traffic's going to get a little heavier. Sidewalk walking will get a little bit more difficult. Awesome. Can't wait. I also can't wait because I want to make sure that Starbucks gift cards work. How often do they go down? Often. Exactly. Exactly. So we're doing a back to school readiness and we're going to try and do everything we can to prevent that. However, we are reliant on our vendor partner. It's not always on UTO stuff that fails. So we're doing everything we can, make sure we got the right escalation paths, make sure we got the right contacts, because this is a big deal for everybody and this is not just for students. Man, if some of these faculty or staff don't get their Starbucks, man, it can be a bad day. So we got to make sure Starbucks works. right? What's the other one that goes down all the time?
TMA.
Meal plans. TMA and meal plans. Meal plans. Students can't go and buy food. Kind of an issue. They get a little testy. Totally agree with them. We got to do everything we can to make sure that doesn't go down. Student information systems, TMA for facilities, mainly they use TMA. So if lights go out or they need a classroom has a bulb that's broken or HVAC is broken, I don't know, air conditioning kind of important in Arizona, TMA has to work, right? These are all things that we got to try and be ready for. So, aha! There are always exceptions to the rule. Now, when I first rolled out this particular incident matrix, and I had mentioned it in an all-hands meeting, 2 all-hands meetings specifically, letting you know that we have this new matrix, what acknowledgement is, what resolution is, I hoped, and I conveyed it, but maybe not explicitly, which is why I'm bringing it up here. As we mature through this process, and as a team, as we grow and learn, we will start to realize that the severity levels are conditional. Not one size fits all into every situation. Great example. We had a network outage at the B facility, right? Yeah, that was B lab. B lab. P0. Building's down. It counts. Well, there's like half a person in the building right now. Nobody's really using it. Air conditioning's up. Was it really necessary to call in the emergency responses? Not really sure. So we need to make an exception. So I have to commend my operations team because network team wanted to downgrade it and they said no. Yes, good job. Because downgrading is bad. Why is downgrading bad? Somebody tell me. Other than you, because you've already answered 3 questions. Someone tell me why downgrading is bad. No, you already know. All right. Yeah, he does have it. I believe it. Everybody was going to say that, right? Yes. We all were going to say that. We don't want to break that SLA. It's important to know when we have a P0, how long that P0 lasts or P1, because if I start downgrading tickets because we've got a workaround or whatever, then I lose visibility to how many P0s and P1s we truly had. The purity of the reporting becomes devalued. So we can't have that. So we need to make exceptions, tying it all back. There need to be specific areas where we say, is this really a 0? And when we note these things, like during summer hour when nobody's in the building, is it really all hands on deck or can we wait a little bit? And it's going to be dependent on customer experience, and we're going to have to learn over time, which means it's okay to make mistakes because that's the only way we learn how to get exceptions. Okay? That's really important. However, once we make mistakes, we ought to document it and learn from it so we don't continue to make the same mistakes, right? So that's another reason why we're here today. So we have downgrading is bad. I'm going to make it in the simplest terms. No downgrading if we can help it, please. I don't know how many times I've been in the war room. Have you guys noticed I'm in the war room? I hope so. I'm in it every day, all day. I look at it all the time. I've even told Timothy, I'll put my cursor in there so it says Jess Evans is typing and type a bunch of garbage in there just so you know I'm watching and then I'll delete it. I do that.
I can attest to that. She does do that.
Because I just want you to know I'm looking at it. Because I know how important it is. And I also know all the work that goes into it for you guys to resolve those problems. I need you to know I'm watching. And I'm watching because I got your back, and I'm watching because I'm trying to standardize these things, and I'm trying to make sure we all do the same thing. So if I put corrections in there, it's only because we got to learn and get on the same page. And that's another reason why I'm up here today, trying to send that consistent message. Okay, and then so the exception list will be defined and constantly refined over time as we learn together. Okay. Oh, good. That's Timothy's slide. Okay. One more thing. I didn't get into it on my slides, but I know we're going to get into it, so I want to kind of set the stage. Talking about downgrading. We also have a dilemma where someone will open a P0 or a P1, and we can't actually find root cause. Unfortunately, we have this happen frequently. I would not say constantly, but it's frequent, okay? So we have a dilemma because a lot of us are confused on how to handle that situation. What is important to understand is that if a P0 or a P1 has no root cause and no permanent fix, but it has a workaround and service is restored, then we are not downgrading the ticket, we close it because service is restored. But you have to open a problem ticket to find the root cause and take the time to investigate a permanent fix. Remember, so we have 2 hours for resolution. Resolution means restoring customer experience. Okay? If it's restored, but not permanently fixed, the incident is closed. You've met the SLA. Yay! Everybody goes, yay! But you open a problem because you need deeper investigation. You need more time to figure it out. Totally cool. But I don't want to lose the visibility of the P0 or P1, so don't downgrade it. Close it. You put the workaround in. Awesome. Now let's work that problem in a non-war room type fashion. Let's work that problem with the slow, methodical thinking that we need to do. Take some time to put some intelligence into it and find a permanent fix. That's why we don't downgrade. Okay, we had another scenario where it was shared earlier in the day where tickets get open and there's a problem already noted. So let's use my existing scenario. We have an incident, we have found a workaround, we open a problem. User calls into the experience center. I'm having this problem, can't connect to whatever. Somebody gets engaged, they invoke the workaround, and it doesn't work. Now what? You cannot tie it to that original problem because it's not the same. That workaround didn't work. You have a new incident. That incident gets opened to whatever appropriate escalation it needs to be, and it stays an incident because the workaround did not work. If the workaround works, you close the incident and attach it to the problem saying, oh my gosh, we had another incident tied to this workaround. So that we can learn. We need these things to learn, right? And eventually, sometimes our machines will learn if we can get smart with our analytics and our machine learning. But right now, we humans need to learn. So when we have a problem, we need to know how many incidents get tagged to it. If it doesn't work, if it's not tied to the problem, then we need a new incident. And we got to go chase that rabbit hole. I just want to make sure some of those nuances are clear because it came out this morning that it wasn't clear. And I want to ask if anyone has questions about that. Problem, incident, request. We'll get to service request in a second, separate scenario, but go ahead.
I think what you're talking about, just to clarify for me, is it sounds like impact and urgency.
So do we take those into consideration? I know from an experience center perspective, that's one thing that we struggle with is we see a problem or an incident come in, then we see a flood of incidents come in, and that's pretty obvious, right, from an impact perspective. Yeah. And then take into consideration. So I think is that what you're talking about here?
Very good point. It is tied to it for sure. But what I think I'm trying to say is that that is not the only indicator.
Sure.
There must be, if we have found a workaround, that workaround must work for that incident. If it doesn't, we can't associate it with that previous problem. We need a new incident. I hope that...
That's clear.
Okay. And so the exception list, I think, is more about impact. And if you get a flood of tickets and we have and it happens to be summer, but we're still having a flood of tickets, then it's not going to be downgraded and it won't go on the exception list. It needs to be resolved because if ticket volume is being driven up, then there's a serious issue and it's clearly impacting our users. And that's where we would stick with the P0 or P1.
Makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. Kevin.
And I would just like to add something to that, which sometimes we're good at it, sometimes we aren't, and it's more the Experience Center. But when we're getting these floods of calls, et cetera, we need to get information from our customers. Sometimes there's caveats of information that will help us troubleshoot things.
Okay.
Because typically when we put out, you update your IVR for the calls coming in, or we put a tweet out, goes update SysL, the volume stops. Whenever people are calling in, we want to get as much information out of them
Yeah, I was going to say, or to your earlier point, triage support is really crucial.
Exactly. That's why we have the war room. Yeah. And so the other point is that everybody, if you haven't seen it already, the war room is being renamed tonight after this training. I have another 7 o'clock session. After that, we will rename it because it truly is the UTO Operations Center war room, which we've been trying to change since I got here. Only took a year and a month. That's okay. But we will finally be the operations center because UTO operations is us, and it is pervasive. It is not driven by one particular service line. So we are the operations center. Okay, service is the next one. This was a scenario from this morning. So a call will come into the experience center, and it's, or even maybe they just generate the ticket on their own, and they ask for an incident because they have an act, but they actually have a service request. Okay, this happens all the time. Please do not open an incident for a service request because there is some misnomer that they think if the P4 is open, that it will get worked on faster. Not true. Not true. Same SLA as a service request. I'm giving this to the Experience Center and anybody who's watching because if they try to bully you into opening an incident, do not do that. If it is a legit service request, open a service ticket, explain to them it's the same SLA, and then it gets routed to the appropriate team. It's too much consternation for the Experience Center and for the engineer who gets the ticket if it's an incident and not really an incident. And that also muddies down our incident numbers. How many actual incidents did we have? Incidents are broken things. Break, fix, outage. If this is not a broken thing, it's a service request and must get funneled appropriately because then our KPIs, I can tell Lev, well, we had this many broken things and we had this many things that we fixed because they asked for us to do something different. Very different story. And when I can explain the volume of work to him, that's when we can have okay, I wonder why my team's overworked. I don't know, it's because they're taking 5,000 calls every day and they're overworked and their queue is backing up and our wait times are like, these are the stories that I need to be able to tell, but we have to make sure we are opening these things correctly to tell the right story. Okay, cool.
Question online.
Oh, awesome.
So if the OC determines it's a P0 or P1, who determines if the incident is an exception?
The OC. The OC determines if it is an exception, and if they can't find the exception, they go up the escalation path. So they'll, depending on the service line, they'll call through the service owner and the appropriate leadership that follows that service line, and eventually, if it has to get to me, it'll get to me. But I'm hoping it'll get somewhere before me and somebody can make that call. But very good question. Any other questions for me? Because we have a lot more to show you that's going to be like super exciting. You're going to be enthralled and you're going to be so glad you're here at 4:30 in the afternoon. And you're going to want to come back at 7. I'm just kidding. Any more questions for me? Yeah, watch it on Zoom. Yeah, no, don't. Oh my God, please tell me you guys have something better to do than do that. Okay, so no more questions for me. I'm going to hand over the rest of the agenda because I think Stephen's going to come up and present, and Timothy is going to do a transition for us right now. So thanks, guys. Thanks, Jeff. All right.
So I'm going to be very quick. I'm Timothy Summers, Executive Director of Cloud Advanced Network Engineering.
Your mouth, please.
Can you hear me okay?
There, you go. Right up here.
So one of the reasons that we're showing this slide is we want to talk about how this is a team effort, right? I mean, at the end of the day, we're all in this together, and that's one of the reasons we're doing this session. But just also to show, from the leadership perspective, I'm here representing Canes and the OC. Eric Dover's here from the Experience Center. We've got Jess here, our COO. We've got some of our directors here. Nate Corwin, I believe, is online, and he's, on behalf of our collaboration tools. So we're here. If you have any questions for us along the way or afterward, don't hesitate. I'll be sitting here, Eric and myself and Jess, we will be in every session. So we were in the first one this morning. We'll be in the last one tonight. So feel free to ask any questions you have, okay? Thanks. Stephen's going to get us rolling. So the next slide's here.
This is going to be fast and furious here. So we can get to at least the ticker. Tim stole it from me the last time. So we're going to talk through how we get the requests that come in, where they come from, and then how they're going to be processed and how the priorities work. And so I'll go through these and give you descriptions, just basically kind of try to give a little bit of guidance and definition as we go through this. The requests come in, obviously this is sort of a generational process. You know, they will come in either by chats or text or web or email or calls. You had 600,000 calls last year, I think. And so, and they also come in tickets, and that's just, you know, they could also come in by Morse code or smoke signals as well. I mean, just depending, get up to my age. But those are sent into the OC, the Experience Center, or to individual technicians, sometimes to specific ASU employees. They need to then be processed and put into actual service now tickets, right? And so, and how that works in, it'll just be relying on the middle group there that have to know which one, and that's part of what we're discussing here so that we can define for you how those tickets need to be entered and what the definitions are. It's critical. Now, over the next 5 years, the billions of dollars that are being invested into AI and those processes will certainly trickle down to help us with that. And you'll see some automation come into this process, we hope. But for now, this is going to be heavily reliant on people at the front end. And so that's where the definition of this is so critical. As you may know, the ServiceNow queues have been renamed. And so we're going to talk through those so that we can identify what they're for and why you want to use which one when. And so at the top, you have the CenturyLink Edge. That has been renamed to now the NextGen Network Intake and Triage, or Intake for short. This is the first point of entry for any ticket or any task as well. And so all tasks and all incidents should initially be placed there, and that's then where for the OC to then take it and process through the classification of that ticket. CenturyLink Core Voice, this is now the NextGen Network Voice Core, vCore. Any major incident involving voice, so this is going to be call routing issues, you know, a building that has no voice, something like that, that's where that's going to fall in. And then also the task-wise, there'll be major tasks as well, like making changes to a current call center tree, adding voice for a new building, for that example. You have the CenturyLink documentation is now the NextGen Network documentation. These are internal requests only. They're things like requesting a Visio topology update or maybe cable record diagram. And then we have field engineering. So what was CenturyLink Edge Tech is now split out, and now you have the NextGen field engineering or field. This is actually the guys that's rolling the trucks, right? So these are guys that are rolling out to the building to do anything from port diagnosis or cabling requests, hardware failures, and then also jack activations or moving phones. We also have the CenturyLink Edge voice coordination that's now the NextGen Voice MACD, right? So moves, adds, changes, deletes. Those are going to be any of the voicemail password resets or a single phone that's not working. So it's not a building, it's down to just a single user. That's where that's going to fall into. It's also going to be where a task would be provisioning the AVST voicemail app. For example. And then core data, the CenturyLink core data is now the NGN network core or NCore. This is where we're talking about the core of the infrastructure, the network infrastructure. So we had this a question came up this morning, what does that mean? If you think about an endpoint being the end user in the desktop, and then that's going to connect them to your core infrastructure in the network, where the brains are for the network. And so that's kind of what this is talking about. It's going to be IP requests, subnets, VLANs, which are virtual LANs, the distribution switch failures, anything like that that's going to be at that core. So it's going to affect a more of a major impact to your network. And then CenturyLink Core Wireless, same piece of it. It's multi-site wireless outages. It's not one AP. This has to be a major impact, and that's where this one will be. It'll also be any architectures and new solutions for wireless will go into this queue. And then we have finally the Teltech and Kearney. You're familiar with this is layer 1, layer 2. They are the ones that are going to handle your jack and port and data pieces. And so both tasks and incidents will go through these. It's any fiber and copper cabling troubleshooting as well as installation of new. These will then process through the OC and through to then directly to Teltech and Kearney who have visibility into these ticket queues. And then finally, we have the project management group. This is going to be anything. It's going to be any project, CPMG project. This is where they're going to track into this piece of it. So asbestos abatement, new buildings, And then CenturyLink inventory. So this is moving now to the NextGen network inventory, which is being managed here by the NextGen network team, including ASU resources. And so that's going to be anything that's related to the asset management and control. And then finally, the high-tech queue is now changing to the NextGen network security group. This is any border security, so that's going to be firewall, that's going to be any of the filtering, anything that has to do with your edge routing component. And those are going to be, so you'll have both network access issues, edge firewall issues, and then the tasks here would be things like change requests to the ICE and to blacklisting devices from the network, things like that. So any questions? Yes, sir.
Can we go back a slide?
Sure.
Maybe I missed it. Can you describe, these examples look very, very similar to me for the incidents and tasks. What's the difference between when we assign something to Teltech versus when we assign something to Kern?
That's a great question. Lane.
Actually, unless I'm wrong, somebody can correct me.
I had to correct this last time. Go ahead.
Oh, I don't want to contradict anything you said, so you can start.
Oh,
Okay, so my
you go, Lainey.
these are internal
Yes.
queues.
These queues, these assignments would be done well into projects or requests. These, I don't think, would be used typically by the Operations Center or the Experience Center for assignment.
Correct, and. So previously what used to happen is that a service request. Sorry, you got more to add before I talk?
No, I was just, what I got out of that was few and far between, if at all, from an EC perspective.
Correct. Few and far between for the Experience Center. It would be a rarity. But previously what happened is the queues, a service request or a project would go into this nebulous CenturyLink queue. Positive words. Queue. That then CenturyLink did some magic. Or not, to coordinate with Kearney and Teltech and kind of do all of this stuff. Now we have the NextGen network team. The queues are being redirected to the NextGen network team, which would invoke Darlene Green, and she watched earlier. And she's on again. Hi, Darlene. And who works for High Tech on our NextGen network team. And that coordination at a project level will happen collectively with Laney's team, with Craig Trimble's team, with Sean, and just anybody, right? Anybody and everybody has to do that depending on the work. And these queues are internal. So Experience Center probably doesn't have to worry about this too much. The OC, I can't imagine a scenario, but as soon as I say there isn't one, something will happen.
We probably don't give them tickets, but we work with them on.
Yeah, this will be funneled through ServiceNow and our normal ServiceNow channels and handled through our project management stuff. So I hope that provides a little clarity. Lainey?
Do you want me to speak or wait?
Go.
So many of these are internal queues or kind of behind the scenes queues. For the most part, by and large, that one on the very first page, intake, is where the Experience Center will live, right, with intake, because then that will go to High Tech, their team, and they will triage and assign.
Right.
But we felt it was important to share all the different queue names, because when you
Right.
get emails or updates,
Right.
you'll see what queue it has been assigned to, and you can provide status back, right? And you'll understand what those queues mean and who's working on it. So by and large, you'll be using the intake queue, but these other ones are all the back office ones that you'll need to reference.
What she said. Yeah. Totally. Good job. Thanks,
Any more
Lainey.
questions about the queues? Yes, sir.
From an Experience Center perspective, before the change, we used to have High Tech was for wireless authentication issues, and then CenturyLink Edge was everything else essentially.
Right.
So now, if I'm understanding right, even someone having trouble authenticating to the network after we've done basic troubleshooting would still go into intake and not
Correct.
to the High Tech queue.
That is
Correct. It's a very important distinction. So can,
still a high-tech queue?
There
yeah.
is-
Okay.
Well, the high-tech queue is still there, but it's actually now the NextGen network that's the one that's from primarily. I think that one is only there because of an automated process that's started dropping in there.
So,
Darlene agrees with all.
excellent. Excellent. But that's important is that I want to make sure everyone on the phone heard. Oh my God, Zoom. I swear I live in 2019. I want to make sure everyone heard that from an experience center standpoint, when those come in, stay in the intake, and that everything that was CenturyLink is now NextGen. And anything that was high tech is also NextGen. And those cues will change after these trainings. So these are excellent questions. Thank you. Exactly why we're here.
So let's talk about the freeze period. So back to school freeze. This is a process that now is best practice for an organization the size of ASU. And so this is going to be a freeze of all major changes during the back to school period. And so from August 13th through August 30th, no major code upgrades, no firewall global routing changes, no changes to the core, no changes to the internet border complex. The changes that are still allowed or the exemptions to this rule are going to be phones, MACDs, single user moves, things like that. And so the minor non-escalated types of changes that do occur on a daily basis. So any questions about this?
Does that include maintenance, just general maintenance?
It depends on the maintenance. If it's maintenance at a system level, then that's a no-go, right?
Okay.
So anything that's like a patch or anything like that. So if you're touching a system in any way that's going to take it offline, it's a no-go,
Okay.
right? So you're better safe than sorry. If you think about it, the dynamic changes that are going on here with the move of vendors and then also the processes and the redefinition and the queue names, the last thing you want to be doing is making major changes to any system right now, right? So let's talk about incident levels.
Wait.
Yes,
Remember last time? Go back to that slide.
Yes, ma'am.
I just want to be consistent. This morning, I took it upon myself, as I normally do, to reiterate that I'm taking a hard line on the freeze. If you need an exception, you have to get it accepted by me. Period, the end. And I'm saying no.
I'm not blaming incinerating.
Yeah, so good luck, unless there is a major catastrophe. And that's an emergency change, and that follows the normal emergency change process. But those three things on the bottom of that slide are it. That's all you're doing. Which also means you're not going on vacation. Please don't go out of town on the weekend. We please still need you here. That doesn't mean we're not doing anything. It's vigilance, vigilance, vigilance for back to school. I told Timothy he's not allowed to even go anywhere for the weekend. He's got to stay in town. So that goes for everybody, just so you know.
Well, you didn't say stay in town.
I know, stay in town, stay in town. Yeah, so anyways, just so you guys understand, taking a hard line on that.
By 7 o'clock, that's going to be on campus, right?
Yeah, right, every meeting, this poor guy, I'm going to have a cot in his office.
Well, I have a question on that.
Yes.
What if there are buildings that, so if you go back to the slide, prohibited changes, minor code, what if they're buildings that are not inhibited by academic facilities?
Does not matter.
Hard and fast rule.
Hard line. No changes unless there are those three things on the bottom.
Look into our eyes.
No changes. I just want to be very clear on this because I ask those questions because this is a much harder stance than I've taken last year and maybe prior, but there will be no disruption because we've done something.
So we have
Here we go.
new growth projects coming online. We're up against the August 13th date, and there was a VLAN missed in the core switch.
Oh, you have
And
until
it's
August 13th.
14th. And in order to get
What's today?
the media, we need the VLAN.
And what's today? The 7th. You got 7 days. 7
John, would
days.
that VLAN change, though, be something that would normally require a change to go through the change board?
Could.
On the core.
On the core side, on the core side, yes. I'm just giving you a scenario.
Great scenario. Better do it before the 13th. Yeah. Good luck. Yeah.
We're picking up
Plan
the east side
appropriately.
the east side of the stadium's getting new stuff, so we're gonna have to.
The east side of the stadium is getting new stuff.
Yeah,
We will follow the emergency change process then. And we will call it such that because then that demonstrates a lack of planning. So we're clear. Okay, because change freeze has been noted for a year. Okay, it's should not be a surprise. That's why we're having this prep to back to school. Excellent conversation.
And if you forbid, you can go to this act order
And
Or the OC war room.
I mean, you'll see which it should be.
Yeah.
And you'll see in there, actually, it will remind you of
Freeze.
freezes.
Yeah.
So,
We've been putting it in there for a while, but this is great conversation.
So, you
Shauna?
made a comment in the first meeting?
yes, oh, yes. So, one last thing to have in mind here is that we are being very vigilant about back to school.
Yes.
So, tomorrow, for example, the leadership is putting together a back to school readiness review. I encourage all of you. What I am asking for, what are all of the things that we need to be worried about? Somebody mentioned that there is a asteroid that is going to pass over. I don't care what it is. I want you to make sure you're elevating it to whoever you need to make sure that we're thinking about it. So back to school, top of everybody's mind.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so we're going to discuss incident levels, and we're going to go through this very quickly so that I can respect your time through this. But if we talk about what makes a priority zero, what's a priority zero that you can think of immediately that happened in the last 60 days?
The Coeur Hall flooding.
Bingo. So that is a major event that is one that could, that is public, it's highly visible, and has impact to major buildings, multiple buildings, and multiple services in multiple departments. And so that's basically, it's the significant number of customers, the reputation of the university is likely to be damaged, it could be a significant cost to the university, and then there's also the one where it's going to take us a while to fix it, right? It's going to be a significant outage that needs a lot more effort and, extensive efforts to fix. That makes it a P0. And so if you are in doubt, that's where the OC comes in. It's really going to be their call. And so I want to be very specific about that. Both P0 and P1s, that is the OC's job to figure out that that's what's going to go there. And they will validate. Customers don't set the priority levels, right? And make sure I say that again. Customers do not set priority levels.
I don't care how insistent they are. Hold on. The customer does not set that priority level. The reason we're having this training and giving you guidelines and giving you exceptions is because we need to make sure that the operations is first and foremost of our mind. And while the customer is extremely important and their experience is extremely important, we have to treat it with the right level of appropriateness so we have the right team members on it. So we must make sure we dance that fine line. Absolutely hear them out. Absolutely help them get to their resolution as fast as possible. But if they say wireless is down in Fulton, and we actually find out that it's their NIC card on their machine and not the whole building, we don't want to ensue panic if it's not necessary. So let's just make sure we walk through those steps carefully. Go ahead.
So we went through the example of a P0, and now basically what does a P0 mean as far as the response? And so it's the SLA process that works out here is that the acknowledgement from the service owner is 15 minutes. But you've got an SLA resolution expectation of 2 hours. And then every 30 minutes, there's a Slack notification to executive leadership. So this is as serious as it gets, and this is exactly what we saw happen for the flood.
And Love monitors that religiously, as do the rest of us. So those things are scripted. So if that ticket is still open, it's automatically notifying us every 15 minutes that it's open. So if there is a workaround and service is restored, please close the ticket. If there's not a workaround and we are still trying to figure it out, don't close the ticket. We need to know.
From an experience center perspective, can we expect those types of notifications and communications to come out in that same interval through the OC Slack channel?
Mm-hmm.
So we can ensure our customers have that latest up-to-date knowledge?
That's right.
Also looking at the Twitters.
Is the ticket automatically updating in the OC channel? I don't think so. No. Can we add it? Ticket's still open? Oh, let's go all out annoying. I love it. That's awesome. But I mean, it's a good point. If I'm getting annoyed on my other executive channel every 15 minutes, why can't we just share the love?
Right. And that's one of the things we do is we know that 30-minute or hour interval depending on
Right.
P1, and we kind of
Nudge them along.
the service owner working it.
Yeah.
If they have any updates, please add it to the tickets.
Yeah.
Yeah, we see that, so we
Yeah.
appreciate that, absolutely.
Yeah, but that's a good idea. We can add that to the OC war room. Absolutely.
But here now that I just need to update the ticket, and then I don't need to notify, the system would automatically do that?
I would assume.
We're planning to do?
So I think that's fair, right? So yes, it's automatically scripted as long as you are updating the ticket.
Right.
the challenge is from an executive standpoint, the only thing that we see in our channel is that the ticket is still open and it's not resolved. We actually don't see any notes. So it would be helpful to have context that if you're still working on that, by putting it in the OC War Room channel, still working, when you make an update, would bring visibility so that we can make that connection. Because the only thing that automatically gets scripted into the executive P0, P1 channel is that the ticket is still open and there's been no resolution. That's all we know.
So not an update of, say I work with vendors,
Correct.
et cetera.
We don't get any of that, which that's why Lev then pings me and goes, okay, so what's going on? I'm like, hold on, let me check this other channel and I'll be right back with you. So
What the EC doesn't want to do is bombard the OC channel with, hey, what's the status? What's the status?
I agree.
And us and Kane trying to do stuff.
Right.
And also to notify you and have this phone call and then have a screen share and then making sure that things are working. Too many things going on at once.
Totally agree.
So if we can have somehow service now update OC channel.
Way
We
cool.
Take that offline.
Can you totally get that put in there
Say,
when
I'm
an
working
update
on it,
happens?
and then
That'd be
I finish,
great.
I could notify
So
that I-
for that. Absolutely. Great idea. Let's get it implemented. Help everybody's life. That'd be awesome. Good one. Yeah, and look, you get candy. Yay! All right, cool.
One important point I want to also make about the P0 is that it's not just the outage that affects, a major portion of the university. It can also be a person. There's certain people that are P0s automatically, right? There's certain buildings like Fulton that are automatically, no matter what, that's going to be a P0. Just make sure that we're all clear about that. And so that list and what is defined there is something that I think is being distributed or is in the process of being put together. So we just have to make sure that gets out. So P1, and I'm going to skip just going through. We're not going to go through examples. That they have them listed here at the top. This will be a service or product outage that affects selected groups, but it's going to be across. It's not going to be one classroom. It could be multiple classrooms, something like that. That would be a P1. And so at this point, it's mission critical, 30-minute acknowledgement, 4-hour SLA, and the executive leadership will be notified every 60 minutes, right? And so just so we're clear, that's the step down in this process. And so campus wireless or wired network outages to a single building occupied, P1, right? So just making sure that's clear on that. Any questions about P1? Good. So we're at 5 o'clock. I will tell you I can get the rest of this done in about 2 minutes. So P2, that's if I'm pushing it. But so P2, now we're in the urgently important. The acknowledgement's 2 hours, SLA 8 hours, not required for executive. This would be a classroom. So that's the way I'd look at that. Classroom, audiovisual goes out. That's one that goes to a P2, okay? So, or if a major component of that classroom or one single class is affected, that would be a P2. So now you drop to a P3. This is going to be where you have a network outage within a small area of a building. It's a portion. And so the distinguishment between this is usually P3s and P4s are always handled by Experience Center. That's a big distinction to make there. And so these are significantly important. The acknowledgement's 4 hours. The SLA is 48 hours. Power outage within an area of a building that's unoccupied, that would be this.
Okay. Also, just to note that the OC does not get involved in 2s, 3s, and 4s. It is strictly just 0s and 1s. So the Experience Center, when you open that ticket, you are not held accountable for making sure someone acknowledges that ticket. Even though the OC is being held accountable for acknowledgement on 0s and 1s, that is not the Experience Center's responsibility. That's the service owner's responsibility. So
they
whoever
should be
gets,
monitoring their queue.
yeah, they should.
And actively working any tickets, escalating as necessary.
That's exactly right. Just so that we understand, because that's a nuance, and so it's not on the Experience Center to hunt somebody down to get them to acknowledge the ticket.
Sometimes they can put the pressure.
But yeah, they could. I agree. They could, but I didn't want, if it is time sensitive and the customer's really hounding you and you want to go the extra mile, I'd appreciate it. But I just didn't want you to think that you're going to be held accountable if somebody doesn't acknowledge a ticket you guys open, which is fair, right? I hope, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Totally can hold you accountable. You want me to add that to the list? You guys have enough to do, don't you? Okay.
All right. So we do have one more question around the exceptions, and it's are single call center changes such as menu or script changes exempted from the freeze? Back to the freeze.
Okay, so I was totally multitasking and I missed it.
Single call center? Or
Yeah, our for the exception, are single call center changes such as menu or script changes exempted?
So my recommendation would be that it depends on the impact of that change. Because if you're talking about these, some of the departmental call centers that we have, they may need to adjust their scripting and their tree depending on the volume and what's happening. So we need to allow them to tune and tweak according to the volume.
Anything we make an
But
exception
not
for will
major.
follow the emergency change process, which means I have to authorize it. And so it means, it doesn't mean it won't happen, just so we're clear.
Right.
It doesn't mean it won't happen, but those things are a case-by-case basis, and they will be reviewed individually on their own merit.
Got it. Okay, and then finally, the P4s, these are going to be things like general desktop support requests. It's an inquiry that's not identified as a deliverable service in a service catalog, that's one, or just a basic investigation. Remember, the P4 is equivalent to a request, and the fact that they have the same SLAs and same response time. So that's going to be 8 hours or 1 business day. The required resolution is 5 business days, and there's no executive notification that's needed for these. So that's the list. This is what you'll have as a take-home for this piece of it. Now, there's this is the handoffs of incidents, and I think this is the part we've alluded to and mentioned a couple of times. The OC can submit P0, P1. The EC submits the P2 and P4. And for receipt, the OC ensures that P0 and P1 incidents are acknowledged. Those that that's the times that we had. They were pretty short too, right? For both of those. And then the service owners or product owners are the ones that ensure that the incidents are resolved. That's the one that can actually resolve any of the tickets that come in. Okay. All right, ticket template. This is a network template, but this gives you an idea of what the information is that they want to capture. Just to give this through, yes, ma'am.
From an EC perspective.
From an EC perspective, right. And so, as you can see, this is what they'll be asking for to capture at the beginning of the ticket as they're creating. So we have down to, what the troubleshooting steps you've been taking, what the block of time is available, and what the user IP address is that we can capture. So, any questions? Yes, ma'am.
One addition. But I said this at the last time, and this is important because this helps you guys understand a little bit about why these things are so important. Okay. You see this fun badge that I have to carry everywhere I go? I am part of the University Executive Emergency Management Team. So when we have a flooding, like Coeur, or we have a massive outage, they invoke the Emergency Operations Center, the EOC. The Experience Center has a role in that, but so do I, and that means so do you. And that means that our ticket and resolution and our incidents and the way we're tracking things and the way we're updating is crucial because I have to sit in front of the rest of the executive team, depending on the severity, all the way up to Dr. Crow, sit in a room with him and go, here's what we're doing in UTO. It is that important. I have to carry this wherever I go. When we had the outing, when we had the flooding, I was in Vegas, cut my vacation short, driving back on a call. Morgan Olson was in Aruba, had to call in from Aruba, and we're all on the call trying to figure out what we're going to do because class is going to start for summer session B, and that classroom got destroyed. So thank God we had people on the ground taking pictures, getting there. Eric drove in, right? These are things, and I'm communicating all the way back up on a conference call, and sometimes they call us to come in depending on the severity of it. But that's one of my responsibilities, which means I need all of you on point because I'm sitting in front of everybody representing all of your work and our work. It's just an important point, how important operations is. Okay, cool.
And so this slide in the last, we didn't get to this in the last session. I think we're at the same point now. What I want to say, though, is after this session, we are going to be providing, I think these need to be defined, and we found that there was some clarity that was required for everybody. So what the difference is between a problem, an event, an incident. And so we're following, like she said, ITIL 4, and you can look them up, you can Google it and find the actual definitions of these, but how they apply to ASU is something that is going to be produced out of this group, and so that'll be forthcoming. So just so you know, and I think that that'll help immensely as you're going through this process. Communication. So Slack, you've got the executive leadership, the OC War Room. You know that name has changed tonight. The executive updates on P0, P1. ServiceNow will be the ticket updates. Email used for direct to senior leaders and providing updates for P0, P1. And then phone for direct to customer contacts, right? And then I think that leads us now to this one, which we can leave up and leave it, and we can probably call it here since we've got time. We're 5:06. So You guys can go through this, and I think we'll hand it out as well. But this is
Perfect.
basically where we are. So hopefully this was helpful. Are there any last minute questions you guys have?
Yeah. Questions? I'm here till like 8 o'clock tonight, so I could totally sit here and answer all your questions, but I know you guys got other better things to do, so happy to address. Are we good? Awesome, you guys. Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody online. Really appreciate it.
I'm sorry, there's just one more thing
Oh, yeah,
before
take the
everyone
survey.
goes.
Right.
Two more things. Before you go, make sure you sign up on the sign-in sheet here so we can account for your attendance. Also, on the back of your forms, or you can hold your camera phone up to that QR code right there. If you have questions, clarity, feedback, that survey link will help us capture that so I don't have to come nag all of you individually. So thank you very much. I appreciate it. Those on Zoom, thank you very much for hanging in there with us. With that in mind, have a good night, everyone.
You guys rock. Thank you.